Let's face it, difficult conversations are the worst. You know the ones, the conversations that make your stomach drop, your heart race, and your mind scramble for the right words. Whether it's with a colleague, a family member, or a friend, the fear of conflict, rejection, or misunderstanding can feel overwhelming. But here's the truth. What if the reason these conversations are so hard is because we're approaching them all wrong? What if you could flip the script, turn the pressure down, and walk into any tough conversation with confidence, knowing exactly how to navigate it without the anxiety, drama, or second-guessing? In this video, I'm going to show you how to make those conversations easier, not just by offering tips, but by introducing a powerful shift in perspective that will completely change the way you approach conflict. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. If you're tired of avoiding hard talks or feeling emotionally drained afterward, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Number 1. The opposite day technique. You know that feeling when you're in a tough conversation, and no matter how hard you try to explain your point, it feels like the other person is just digging their heels in even deeper. It's like you're speaking two different languages, and all the while, the tension is rising. Yeah, we've all been there. You can feel your emotions bubbling up, ready to spill over, but you don't want to be the one to escalate things, right? Now, trust me on this. What if I told you that the key to turning that conversation around could actually be acting like it's opposite day? I know, you're probably thinking, wait, what? How does this make sense? Stay with me here because it's not as crazy as it sounds. The opposite day technique is all about flipping the script and challenging the way both you and the other person are approaching the situation. And here's the beauty of it. By arguing for the opposite side, even if you don't agree, you actually create space for the other person to question their own stance. It disrupts the predictable pattern of the conversation and takes the power out of their defensive grip. Think about the last time you tried to have a serious discussion with someone, and it just felt like you were both hitting a brick wall. You know the type. You're saying your piece and they're digging in, convinced they're right. It's exhausting, right? You might have caught yourself getting more frustrated, maybe even raising your voice because you're just trying to make them hear you. But all that does is escalate the tension. You end up feeling unheard and they feel misunderstood. And suddenly, the conversation is nothing but a power struggle. We've all been there fighting for that last word, believing that's the way to win. So here's where opposite day comes into play. The idea is simple but super effective. When they start throwing their arguments at you, you respond by agreeing, but only to a point. Then take it a step further by introducing an opposite or exaggerated viewpoint. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but here's why it works. People don't expect it. They're anticipating you to either defend your position or retreat. Instead, you're throwing them a curveball. For example, if someone says, "I don't think we should go to the party, I just want to relax," you could respond with, "Yeah, you're right. Why not just cancel all social plans forever? Who needs fun anyway?" The over-the-top twist forces them to reconsider their stance in a way they wouldn't have if you simply agreed or disagreed. It disrupts the cycle of conflict and nudges them into a more reflective space. I've used this technique in real life, and let me tell you, it's powerful. I was at a family gathering, and my cousin was going off about how we should all just stop using social media. He was passionately ranting about how it was ruining society. Normally, I'd try to defend my position, giving reasons why social media has value. But instead, I leaned into the opposite day technique. I said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. Let's just throw out our phones and go back to carrier pigeons. Who needs the internet, right?" It caught him completely off guard, and within a few seconds, he was laughing. It broke the tension and opened up a more reasonable, calmer conversation. we ended up discussing the topic in a much more balanced way. Here's the thing. This isn't about trying to win the conversation. It's about reclaiming your emotional space and shaking off the grip of tension. When you introduce the unexpected, it shifts the entire dynamic. It gives you the freedom to stay in control of your emotions and guides the conversation towards something more constructive. It's a clever way of saying, I'm not going to let this conversation stress me out, and I'm not going to let you control the narrative. So the next time you find yourself in a tough conversation, try this. Instead of battling it out point by point, throw in the opposite day card. Not only does it give you back your peace, but it also teaches both you and the other person how to step outside the usual cycle of conflict. You don't have to back down or over-explain yourself. You just need to be smart about how you engage. This is about your peace of mind, your space, and your ability to navigate difficult conversations with grace and wit. Don't let the intensity of a moment steal your calm. Take control, flip the script, and let the conversation unfold in a way that leaves everyone thinking, not just defending. After all, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a tough conversation is simply refuse to engage in the same old patterns. You've got this. Number 2. The power of silence. Challenge. Ever been in one of those conversations where every word feels like it's being thrown into a fire, adding to the heat instead of cooling things down? You know the kind, where you're trying to make your point, but the more you talk, the more the other person digs in their heels. It's frustrating, right? Now, what if I told you that the secret to diffusing these conversations isn't talking more, but actually saying less? Yeah, I know it sounds a bit strange, but trust me on this. Silence might just be your most powerful tool. Now, you might be thinking, wait, silence? That sounds passive or even awkward, and honestly, I get it. We've all been in situations where silence felt like a tension-filled void, like any noise would be better than just sitting there in complete quiet. But here's the thing, silence isn't passive. It's a power move. It's about reclaiming control, pausing to let the other person's words settle, and letting your presence be the loudest thing in the room. In moments of tension, silence can actually speak louder than any argument you can offer. Think back to that time you were having an argument with a friend or partner, and the conversation was escalating, with both of you trying to prove your point louder and faster. You know the type. Your voice gets higher, your hands are gesturing, and suddenly you're both caught in a loop of over-explaining. It's like both of you are trying to one-up each other, but neither of you is really listening. We've all been there, right? You're talking, but you're not really communicating. It feels exhausting, and you walk away thinking, what even just happened? This is where the power of silence challenge comes in. It's simple but incredibly effective. Instead of jumping in with a rebuttal, hold back and let silence fill the space. Now, I know that might sound like a recipe for awkwardness, but it's not about creating discomfort. It's about creating space. Silence forces the other person to fill the gap, which can often lead them to reflect more deeply on what they're saying. People are uncomfortable with silence, and they'll either soften their stance or feel compelled to clarify their position. Either way, it shifts the conversation in your favor without you having to raise your voice or explain yourself over and over again. I've used this strategy myself, and let me tell you, it's been a game changer. A while back, I was at a family dinner where my cousin was going on and on about his political views, loudly, passionately, and with no room for differing opinions. The conversation was getting heated, and I could feel my own frustration building up. Normally, I'd dive right in with a counter-argument, trying to convince him why his views were flawed. But this time, I decided to try something different. I just stopped talking. I looked at him, listened, and let the silence hang in the air for what felt like an eternity. At first, he didn't even notice, but then, slowly, he started to soften. He realized the conversation wasn't going the way he expected it to, and he started to reconsider his stance. It was like watching the heat slowly dissipate from the room. By the end of the evening, we didn't agree on everything, but the conversation had shifted from a battle to a much more open discussion. Here's the beauty of silence. It allows you to step out of the emotional roller coaster of a conversation and simply observe. You don't have to over-explain yourself or fight for your point. You don't have to constantly prove you're right. This strategy is about staying calm, holding your ground, and giving yourself the space to decide how you want to engage. It's not about avoiding the conversation altogether. It's about engaging with more intention and less emotion, and that's empowering. You get to control how much energy you put into the discussion. Here's the beauty of silence. It allows you to step out of the emotional roller coaster of a conversation and simply observe. You don't have to over-explain yourself or fight for your point. You don't have to constantly prove you're right. This strategy is about staying calm, holding your ground, and giving yourself the space to decide how you want to engage. It's not about avoiding the conversation altogether. It's about engaging with more intention and less emotion. And that's empowering. You get to control how much energy you put into the discussion. When you embrace silence, you're not backing down. You're choosing peace. You're taking a step back and allowing the conversation to unfold at its own pace, with your emotional equilibrium intact. You're not letting the heat of the moment dictate your response. Instead, you're showing that you can stand strong without feeling the need to defend every word. So the next time you find yourself in one of those tense conversations, remember the power you hold in your silence. Don't feel like you have to keep talking to fill the void. Let the silence do the heavy lifting for you. By doing so, you'll find that you not only save your energy, but also earn more respect in the process. Silence isn't about being passive. It's about being powerful. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are worth far more than any heated exchange. Number 3. Preemptive apology. Strategy. Ever find yourself in a conversation where you're about to say something you know will ruffle a few feathers? You can feel the tension creeping up, and before you even open your mouth, you're already bracing for impact. What if I told you that the key to navigating those moments isn't to brace for a fight, but to apologize before you even do anything wrong? Sounds odd, right? Trust me on this. It's a game changer. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Why apologize for something I haven't even done yet? It sounds counterintuitive, maybe even passive-aggressive. But hear me out. The preemptive apology strategy is all about disarming the situation before it escalates. When you start a conversation by acknowledging that things might get tense or even uncomfortable, you take the power out of the other person's hands. You show that you're aware of how your words might be perceived, and in doing so, you soften their defenses. It's like putting a cushion down before you even sit down. You're making the whole conversation more comfortable for everyone involved. You know the type of situation I'm talking about, right? You're at work or maybe with a friend, and you have to deliver some bad news or bring up something tricky. You've been there before, hesitating, stressing about how to phrase things perfectly, all while trying to avoid stepping on anyone's toes. It's that moment when you know there's going to be some pushback, but you're trying to figure out how to make it go as smoothly as possible. We've all been there, trying to walk that tightrope between honesty and sparing someone's feelings. But here's the twist. Instead of overthinking what you might say wrong, why not just apologize for it up front? Get it out of the way. Here's why this works. When you preemptively apologize, you create an environment of empathy and understanding. It shows that you're not trying to be defensive or combative. You're simply acknowledging that tough conversations can be awkward and messy. And the best part, it completely disarms the other person. They're less likely to react with frustration or defensiveness because you've already softened the ground. It's not about admitting guilt or being passive. It's about taking the edge off the situation and setting the tone for an open, honest exchange. Let me give you a real-life example. A while ago, I had to have a conversation with a close friend about something that had been bothering me for weeks. I was nervous, knowing how delicate the topic was. I could already hear the defensive tone in my head. So, instead of diving straight into the issue, I started the conversation with a preemptive apology. I know this might be a tough conversation, and I really don't want to upset you, but I need to get something off my chest. I could see her immediately relax. It was like a huge weight had been lifted from the moment. Instead of bracing for an attack, she listened, and the conversation went much smoother than I expected. I wasn't attacking her. I was simply saying, "Hey, I'm aware this might be uncomfortable, and I'm not trying to make it worse." It opened the door for a real constructive conversation instead of a defensive back and forth. When you use the preemptive apology strategy, you're not shrinking or giving in. You're actually showing strength. You're acknowledging that conversations can be challenging and that you're willing to step up and make things easier. It's about taking responsibility for the atmosphere of the conversation, not necessarily for the content. You're choosing to navigate with grace, which is a powerful thing. This approach allows you to keep your emotional integrity intact while still tackling tough topics head-on. So the next time you're about to dive into a difficult conversation, give this strategy a try. Instead of tiptoeing around the subject, start by acknowledging that things might get a little uncomfortable. It'll change the entire tone of the conversation, making you feel more confident and the other person feel more at ease. Remember, this is about reclaiming your space, your peace, and your dignity. You're not avoiding conflict. You're inviting resolution with empathy and care. Take a moment, think about your next tough conversation, and remember, by owning the potential for discomfort up front, you're showing that you've got the emotional maturity and strength to handle whatever comes next. Your space, your peace, and your dignity matter. Number 4, the mirror effect approach. Have you ever noticed how when someone raises their voice at you, your instinct is to do the same back? Or when someone crosses their arms, you unconsciously start to mirror their defensive posture? Funny how that happens, right? But what if I told you that you could use this natural tendency to your advantage in tough conversations? Yes, trust me on this. The mirror effect approach isn't just some quirky psychology trick. It's a powerful tool for creating connection, diffusing tension, and actually getting your point across without a shouting match. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Wait, you want me to mirror someone's behavior? Isn't that like becoming a robot or a copycat? I get it. It sounds a bit odd at first. But here's the twist. Mirroring is not about mimicking in a robotic way. It's about creating rapport and trust without saying a word. It's about subtly reflecting the other person's body language, tone, and energy, which in turn makes them feel heard, understood, and more likely to listen to you. It's one of those strategies that sounds simple, but works wonders in diffusing tension and getting your message across. Think back to that conversation you've had where the energy was off. You know the type, the one where the other person is upset, defensive, or frustrated, and no matter how carefully you choose your words, the conversation seems to go nowhere. We've all been there. You're trying to get your point across, but the person is already on edge, and you can feel the walls going up. Now imagine if, instead of pushing harder, you simply matched their energy for a moment. Not in a confrontational way, but in a way that shows you're genuinely trying to align with them before you offer your perspective. When you do that, it's like a reset button. Suddenly the walls start to lower and you've created a bridge, not a battleground. Here's how it works. When we mirror someone's body language or tone, their brain recognizes it as a sign of empathy and understanding. We're social creatures, and our subconscious minds are always looking for clues that we're safe and connected. By reflecting their posture or speech patterns, you're signaling, "Hey, I get you. I'm with you, not against you." This creates a moment of emotional alignment, and it opens the door for a more constructive, calm conversation. You're not mocking them, you're validating their feelings. It's a non-verbal signal that you're tuned in to what they're going through. I used this approach just last week during a tense meeting at work. One of my colleagues was visibly upset about a project delay, and the atmosphere was thick with frustration. The more I tried to calm things down with logical explanations, the more he dug in his heels. That's when I decided to take a different approach. Instead of continuing to stand rigidly across from him with my arms crossed, I mirrored his body language. I leaned in slightly and softened my posture to match his. I even adjusted my tone to be a bit more measured and calm, just like his had become. It wasn't an act. It was about matching the energy he was putting out. After a few minutes, I could see the tension begin to ease. He started to open up more about his concerns. We were no longer in opposition. By simply reflecting his demeanor for a moment, I was able to create a sense of safety and understanding that allowed us to communicate more effectively. This technique isn't just about mimicking for the sake of it. It's about meeting people where they are emotionally, without judgment, so you can guide the conversation to a more positive place. It helps you connect on a deeper level and makes your interactions feel less confrontational. Instead of thinking of tough conversations as a battle to win, see them as an opportunity to bridge the gap between your perspective and theirs. The more you understand and empathize with the other person, the more likely they are to hear you when it's time for you to share your thoughts. The mirror effect approach isn't just a conversation hack. It's a way to reclaim your peace and emotional integrity in any dialogue. It's about staying calm, staying present, and showing strength by aligning with others, even if you disagree. You're not losing yourself in the conversation. You're giving yourself the power to control how you engage, with intention and empathy. This is your moment to step into conversations with confidence, knowing that you can shift the dynamic without raising your voice or your stress levels. So, the next time you find yourself in a heated discussion, try the mirror effect. You don't need to fight fire with fire. Instead, reflect the energy around you to guide things in a more positive direction. By doing this, you're not just showing that you understand, you're showing that you have the emotional intelligence and strength to create space for meaningful dialogue. Your space, your peace, and your dignity, these are things you have the power to protect, even in the toughest conversations. Number 5. The empathy hijack. Method. What if I told you that the secret to diffusing a tough conversation isn't about being right or even getting your point across? What if I told you it's about turning the tables and using the power of empathy to hijack the situation? Yes, you heard me right. Empathy, the very thing that makes us human, is often the key to winning over even the toughest critics, calming down heated situations, and gaining the upper hand in a conversation. Now, I know what you're thinking. Empathy? Isn't that just for the warm and fuzzy moments, like when someone's crying over their favorite character dying in a TV show? Trust me, it's not just for those moments. Empathy has the potential to be the most powerful tool in your emotional toolkit, especially when you're up against resistance. Here's why. The minute someone feels truly understood, truly heard, it's like their defenses start to drop. When was the last time you were in an argument and instead of defending yourself, someone said, "I get why you feel that way"? Suddenly, your anger softens, right? That's the magic of empathy. We've all been there. You know the type. the conversation where the other person is adamantly disagreeing with you, or worse, they're outright criticizing your ideas. Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, and all you want to do is push back, right? But here's the thing, the harder you push, the more they resist. It's a classic standoff. You're both digging your heels in, waiting for the other person to back down, but it never happens. This is where the empathy hijack comes in. Instead of fighting for your position or trying to out-argue the other person, you take a step back and actively listen. You acknowledge their feelings. You might even say something like, "I can see why this is frustrating for you," or "That sounds really tough." You're not agreeing with them, mind you. You're simply showing that you understand where they're coming from. And here's the twist. Once you've validated their feelings, they'll feel like they've been heard, and it becomes way easier to present your own point of view without triggering the defensive reaction you were getting before. Let me give you a real-life example. A couple of months ago, I was in a meeting where a colleague was absolutely furious about a decision I had made on a project. He was going on and on, pointing out how my choice had negatively impacted his team. Naturally, my first instinct was to start defending myself, but then I remembered the empathy hijack method. Instead of diving into my defense, I paused and said, "Wow, I can see that this is really upsetting for you. I didn't realize how much this was going to affect your team. I hear you." His expression softened immediately. I wasn't attacking back. I was validating his feelings. And you know what happened next? We actually had a productive conversation about how we could fix the problem together. It was no longer about being right or wrong, it was about finding a solution, and he was much more open to hearing my perspective because I had shown him empathy first. Here's the beauty of this method. You don't lose anything by empathizing. In fact, you gain everything. Empathy hijacks the conversation by diffusing tension and building rapport. It's about respecting the other person's emotions while still holding space for your own. This is where personal growth happens. This is where you stop over-explaining yourself or shrinking back just to avoid conflict. Instead, you stand firm in your truth while also allowing the other person to feel heard. That's power, my friend. You don't have to fight to win every argument. What matters more is how you navigate the tension with grace, control, and an understanding of the other person's emotional state. It's not about backing down. It's about showing up with emotional intelligence. This is your chance to reclaim your peace in challenging conversations and remind yourself that true strength lies in understanding, not in confrontation. So, next time you find yourself in a heated conversation, try the empathy hijack method. Don't engage in the battle of who's right. Instead, disarm the situation with empathy and watch the defenses crumble. It's your space, your peace, and your dignity at stake. And by hijacking the conversation with empathy, you not only maintain them, you amplify them. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video gave you some valuable insights and practical tools to make your next difficult conversation a little bit easier. If you found this helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Your support means a lot. And if you want more content on topics just like this, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Know someone who struggles with tough conversations. Share this video with them. It might be just what they need. I'd love to hear your thoughts and personal experiences in the comments below. What strategies have worked for you? Or what's been your biggest challenge? Let's keep this conversation going and support each other in growing our communication skills. Remember, difficult conversations aren't impossible. They're an opportunity to connect, understand, and grow. You've got this. See you in the next video.